I see my job is not to tell you what to think. It's to get you thinking, to give you the information. Because at the end of the day, we cannot abdicate, responsibility out for ourselves, our homes, or our children.
Welcome to Set Life, where we tell stories from our industry. I'm Kelly Leger, and this is Amber Buteau.
Well, here we are again in Soundstage 1 at For the One Studio, and we have an exceptional guest for y'all today, who is fiery voice in today's society, which I love as a fellow mama.
Yeah.
And welcome to the show, Jessica Brassington. I
Longtime friend, Brassington. I got it. Come on.
Yeah. That was your longtime friend, Brassington there. Yes. So welcome to the show. Thanks for sitting with us today. And super excited for our audience to hear your story. Kind of where you started in the industry, kind of how you saw it through your life, to the platform and the voice that you have today, and your passion behind all of that. So, yeah, let's start with, let's tell the audience, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do and all of that.
Okay, so like we were kind of saying before, it's a little bit of a loaded question, but I am a mom. I've been a community advocate for quite some time. And really just looking back when you mentioned threading, seeing how these things have been threaded throughout my life, I've written from a really young age. And a lot of people would say I was a bit of an old soul. I was the one watching, like Frasier, as a kid, or got the jokes or different things like that. And so it was really interesting to see, like, I was popular and smart, but yet I was always a little bit ahead of my time. So a visionary, I didn't have the words for that back then, but now I see I've been a visionary for a lot of my life. Graduated A&M, got my marketing degree and business degree, didn't use it, like I thought I would, had kids. And then, something called the internet came along, and I thought, man, I hear I was sharing stuff back then with chia seeds and water, and people at the gym would say, oh, what is that? And at the time I was a pioneer, that visionary again, as homeschooling my kids, and people would ask me questions, and I thought, man, I think there's a thing called a blog, and I should just start sharing information on there. And instead of sharing my information with strangers at the gym and different things, I'll point them to this. So back in the day, you had to actually code the websites and the blogs back then, and I just figured it out.
Wow.
I remember having a books this thick, and so I started out with the homeschooling housewife and my kale kids, which is back then people were they didn't know a lot of the gut health and all that back then.
Oh my goodness, you're speaking my wife's love language there.
So now that we're talking about it, that's where it started, with sharing. I've always spoken, I haven't really been afraid to speak out for what I think, is right. And I did pageants in college, and that is where I really saw the power of a platform. I saw that if you can get in front of the people and have some authority and some recognition there, it was a way to make an impact.
Yeah.
And so throughout my life, as the seasons of life changed, becoming a mom, and that really was at the forefront of my life. But through blogs at the time, and then a podcast, that was a way I could share my part of my life with the world. So started doing community advocacy, found out what GMOs were, genetically modified organisms. This was 16 years ago, and I was just in shock, y'all. I mean, this to show y'all how far I've come from where I am today. I was like, wait, you mean the government would let food be in the stores that harms us? Like, this can't be right. So I've come a long way since then. So I said, oh my gosh, people need to know about this. It's in your foods. And so I just started doing research and using my tools that were available to me. And along the way, I became a certified holistic health coach and started applying it to my life and sharing online about that. So that while also raising 3 girls and homeschooling off and on. And then I said, I'm going to do a podcast. And I started in my closet, would cry in my closet a lot with all the tech. I see, this gorgeous studio, all the pieces that are there. And my gift as a visionary is not the tech, but, looking along the way, God has been every step of the way. And a lot of times you say, this is not, the things I do, I don't see as a job. It's truly my vocation and my calling. And I just knew I had to keep going forward. Yeah. So I had a blog. My brand was Unprocessed Jess, Live Life Less Processed. Because I was finding that it's so overwhelming. And I thought, well, if we can just give you a few things to do, just live a little less processed in all those areas of your life. Started a podcast for that. It was called Naked Talk with Jess. I'm a Christian, I'm a believer. So that was a little shaken up, right? People were like, oh no, why do you have naked in your title? And I'm like, okay, it's candid conversations, it's naked talk, but I haven't been afraid to kind of push the envelope a little bit. And then did that for a couple years. Well, one of my last guests on there was someone you and I both know, Dr. Chase Banks. And I said, man, that's my boy right there. He's awesome. We were doing a men's sexual wellness series. And around that time, this was 2021, I had a lot of friends who had family members in the hospital and they weren't allowed to see them. Well, because of my holistic circles, I was a lot more privy to things that were being used in the hospital protocols like remdesivir. And I said, hang on now, something's not adding up. So let's go back to when I thought, man, the government wouldn't do something in the stores that would hurt you, right? Well, I'm a lot wiser, let's fast forward, by then it was 2021. And so I started doing my research and looking up some government sites and started seeing about Fauci and remdesivir and the studies where it was over 50% mortality rate. And I'm like, okay, something's not right here. Mm-hmm. And so I just started saying, y'all, the hospital protocols are murdering people. It's not necessarily COVID. So that was pretty bold. Yeah. I'm like, man, no one's liking my post on Facebook when I post this stuff. But then people would start messaging me and saying, hey, my mom's in the hospital, or my dad or my husband. And so someone connected me with the local representative and said, maybe he can help. So y'all was so clueless about politics on the local level, which is ironic because I got the American Legion Award, and growing up, I was telling you earlier, I would write and went on a trip to DC. So it's not that I didn't, love my country and know we had to get involved, but when you become a mom, you're just so busy and wrapped up in life. Yeah. And it really showed me the importance of legislation and that ignorance was no longer an option. So unfortunately, all of my friends at the time, their family members died of either neglect in the hospital if they chose not to do the protocol, or from the protocol itself. And so it just lit a fire under me. So I put my podcast to the side, my holistic health coaching, and I just was like, this is wrong and we need to start doing something. Mm-hmm. So that is where the roots of Mama Bear Rising started. I had never testified at the Senate in my life. I testified for Montgomery County, the congressional maps. I'm like, what's a congressional map? Like, I had no idea. And then at the end, when I was writing my 3 minutes, I said, this mama bear's out of hibernation and she's not going back to sleep. Yeah. And so that laid the foundation of what is now Mama Bear's Rising. Wow. Oh, wow. So that's, I don't know if that helps.
No, that's great. That's really kind of told the thread of through it all. And for those that don't know that are watching, what is Mama Bear Rising?
So Mama Bear's Rising, it originally began with, like I said, speaking out about that. So then teachers started coming to me and messaging me, hey, I'm a teacher and there's these books in my classroom, or they're trying to make me use pronouns and keep things from the parents. Well, interesting enough, looking back, a lot of times in our life, and I see this now more so than ever, I was like, Lord, why am I doing these different things? They seem so disconnected. Like I'm a coach and then I'm this. And then I went to be a certified sex educator in LA, because in Texas, we didn't have a lot of sex education. Well, let me tell y'all something. I was one in the back of the room raising my hand like, let's just pretend I know nothing y'all are talking about. We're going to have to define some things because it was pretty wild, I'll say, in that class. And what brought me to that was during my holistic health coaching, I would be coaching these couples, and there were so many couples with sexless marriages. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, hold on now. Y'all can share a home, kids, taxes, and a dog, but y'all can't talk to each other about sex, and you're married. And so I just started digging, deeper and saying, okay, what is this? And especially as Christians, I wasn't seeing anything at the time. So that led me to that class, and there's a point to that. They were starting to talk about pronouns, and there was a speaker who was a trans person. And I was honestly trying to learn, and I remember the speaker got confused when I was asking questions for clarification. If I refer to your partner and there's a group of people, but your partner's a they, them, how do I distinguish that? So I just was seeing different things before it was a bigger topic. Yeah. So I was familiar with that, I guess is the point.
Yeah.
So teachers are coming to me, parents are coming to me about these books. I've been an advocate for veterans. I lost my brother to combat PTSD suicide. And I'm like, Lord, this is so much, so many things, but yet it's separate, but they're all connected in some way. And so that led me to saying, I need a place and a name. So Mama Bears Rising then became a movement. It has since then evolved into a community, and we just celebrated 2 years and an app, because what I wanted to do was have a place where moms and now a lot of dads could go for trusted info. Mm-hmm. And what I keep hearing again and again, y'all, is like, it's hard for people to know who to trust and what the angle is and where to go. And I see my job is not to tell you what to think. It's to get you thinking, to give you the information. Because at the end of the day, we cannot abdicate, responsibility out for ourselves, our homes, or our children, or our health. So it's been an interesting journey, but that's where it is. And we have an app, and it's where you can go to find, we like to say, what's keeping you up at night. Let's get you started there.
Yeah.
And then if you want to look into your health, or your kid you just found out they have to be gluten-free and you don't know where to start because you're living on pizza and, Chick-fil-A sandwiches, well, then you can go to the health and wellness. So that's how it started, and that's where it's at.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's been a heck of a journey.
Man, I don't even know where to start there. That's like, God, we got everything from sex ed to health, politics, to like, man, wow.
Yeah.
That's all Mama Bears Rising, all of that.
Yes. So it kind of got a little astray there, and I don't know that the intentions were necessarily ill intentions, but a lot of things today you'll find there's a political part to it. And at the end of the day, it's like, y'all, I don't need to tell you if it's Republican or Democrat that we shouldn't mutilate a child and remove a child's penis or her breast.
Yeah.
Let's stop that now because I've seen how the games worked, right? There's major systems of the world. Now I'm a lot more privy to the things of politics, and I get the game a little bit better. I think there's some amazing people doing some really hard work and writing great legislation. But I think the way it's presented a lot of times is drama-filled.
Yes.
And I barely can remember when my trash is, going to be taken out. I don't want you to waste my time saying these names or making fun of people or whatever. I don't want that. Give me the issue. Let me know where to go. And that's where I started seeing a voice for Mama Bears Rising, was without that. So I would love to, I think I was sharing with you, when I do launch my podcast, have a short section of politics without the ick. I think it needs to be like, don't tell me what to think. I don't want your opinion. Share the information, and I'll go from there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of refreshing.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah, somebody to keep all their emotion out of it, their agenda out of it, and just give you the straight up.
That's what I hear.
Wow.
Is, media in itself, if you look at the creation of actually communication in media, you go back to the military when they could communicate with SOS, right? They learned that they could send a message, and mentally what it would do to the army that's thousands of miles away. Yeah. And you could strike fear into them. You could breed confidence into them just by saying something,
right?
By communication.
Mm-hmm.
Then the radio came into play, television came into play, but it was a tool originated to manipulate the way that we think and perceive of something.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I could say something over the radio and put all these sounds in the background, and it sounds like I've got an army, it's one person in there banging a whole bunch of things, right? The other person just trusted that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So in the beginning of media, there was manipulation.
Yeah.
In the root core
Various
of it.
propagandas. Yeah.
Propaganda.
Yes. Yeah. You had agenda and propaganda in what you were doing with it.
Yes.
Now, if we were to claim that back and use this format platforms for the good, which is what I believe our mission here at the studio is to produce good in the world, then I say all the time, I don't want to give you an agenda. I may have my own personal opinions, my own personal beliefs. I am going to tell you that. I am going to give you ownership. I say it many times on here. Jesus is my best friend. That is mine. I am not going to force that on anybody. I just say that as the filter I look through, and that's what I believe. But I'm going to give you room to make your own decision and present to you what information there is, facts that I know, information without the drama or without me trying to agenda push to you.
Yeah.
And then that's essentially what I have loved about your cause, your mission, and what you do is you're just here to say, hey, I'm not this or that. I'm just don't shoot the messenger. I'm just giving the information without some sort of agenda on it to try to say you should or you have to, or like, no, here's XYZ. What do you think?
Or using a snippet or a headline when we know that the attention span of the American people is shorter and shorter. And most people are not going to go and look beyond that headline.
That's true.
So you can manipulate just in the headline alone if there's bias within that.
Sure.
So that's where I want to really be there and in a different way and fill in that gap. And along the journey, and you've probably seen that in y'all's studio or in your different shows, it's like, surely someone's doing this. And eventually you say, well, if no one's doing it, maybe I'm supposed to be the one. And it's a big calling and it is scary at times, but God's provided the next step and resource and person every step of the way. And it was really important for me to fund everything myself. I want to do things the way I want to do them. I don't want to answer to anybody. I want to share truth, period, end of story.
Yeah.
And it was very important for me to do that. And with the politicians as well, I wanted to make sure I'm highlighting the ones who are sticking to their word and doing that, but also that people didn't say, man, I don't want to ask this politician, him or her, the hard questions. And so that was very important to me from the beginning, to fund it myself. Every dollar's been mine. And then protect my brand, because a lot of the things that we talk about, even though mutilating children should not be something controversial to talk about, it is.
Yeah.
And I think, like, back to your point, Amber, like, if they make it where, oh, if I say this, then people are going to think this or that, they're suppressing so much just by doing that. So maybe if there's a way we could just say, don't be afraid to at least talk about this, and that's
the maturity to have the conversation over hard things.
Yes.
Right. And that's what I think we're losing in society, in my
Don't even want to say anything or just talk about it because they're afraid of what's going to be put on them, or
the labels that have been put everywhere, the barriers that have been put up everywhere, the division that's everywhere versus like, hey, again, I say I like to foster and create space for you to be you, right? Yeah. If you respect that I'm going to get to be me.
Yeah.
And that, in my opinion, is a healthy environment.
Yeah.
But if I create a space that says, oh, you have to be this way to come into my space.
Right.
or you don't come into my space, you're really limited, in my opinion, to understand really what is happening in the world, because you're saying it's my way or the highway, versus saying I'm mature enough to sit in the same space as something that I disagree with, or is a hard thing to discuss, but I'm willing to have the conversation.
And I've met people along the last 2 years who are opposite of what, the stances that I take. And as long as we've been respectful, we're able to say that, because I truly want to be able to get to the root, go back to holistic health, right? You can't just manage the symptoms. We need to get to the root cause of what's beneath that. So to truly do that, you need to have an open dialogue with true concern for the person and caring. So along this journey, I started seeing a lot of people who were truth seekers and different things like that, and saw the things happening that I did, but their delivery I did not agree with. And it was sarcastic, making fun of, or saying, see, I told you I was right. It's like, I don't want to be right in a lot of these things.
If all you're seeking is to be right, you'll find a way to be right. If you're seeking truth, that comes with great humility.
Yeah. And it might be, hey, I said this with the information I had.
Right.
But now that I know this, it's,
my opinion's changed.
Maybe that's what journalism at some point was supposed to be. I know there are some out there that are starting to, it seems, to go more to that journalism style, and that's wonderful. But as a believer as well, it's shared truth in love.
Yeah.
So I saw the love part missing.
Amen.
And so I think let's just be that and start showing by example, and maybe more people will start doing that too.
Well, if there's a truth that sets free, then it stands to reason that there's a lie that brings you into bondage. And so the lie's got to be exposed, and the truth has to be there to grab a hold of for any freedom to come. Right? It has to be, right? It's just the world. Somebody's got to say the emperor has no clothes on if he has no clothes on.
Yeah.
We can't just all be like, oh, no, he doesn't have
clothes on. Goes back to that naked again.
Just saying. There you go. Somebody's got to say it, And so it's like, you have to, I love it. I love all that. That's all phenomenal conversation. That's great that you're doing, all those things.
I think there's a maturity, and that's what I was going to hit on next, was the part that I believe is missing too, is the love. Is the love to say, I love you even though we don't agree. I still love you, right? Yeah. Like, I still value you as a person, even though I don't agree with your behaviors or what you do or your belief system or whatever, right? But that takes, a humble stance, to be able to do that, to sit in those spaces. And I think it takes a lot of courage and strength to do what you're doing with a kindness to it.
And, what I've found is you can be resolute in your conviction, but also be respectful and be kind about it. And back to your point, is this for me to show I'm right? Or is it truly to allow the people I'm speaking to give them information that could impact their lives in a positive way? And also, I've gotten to where I don't need to see necessarily the fruit of this labor to know it's making an impact.
Yes, that can't be overstated, because let's face it, most of the time you're not going to see the fruit of all your labor when you're talking on these levels, on these big subjects, on these things that are deep here and deep here. That takes time. That takes time for maturity and growth and change and breaking down to rebuild. That just takes time, of saying the right thing again and again and again and again. It's like, with kids, right? You say the right thing again and again and again, and finally you hear it parroted back to you, and you're like, I won. A win. They get it. It's stuck somewhere. It's got to be the same way. You just keep saying the truth, and you don't back down, and you just keep saying it again and again.
Yeah. And we're having to unlearn so many things that we've learned, whether we knew it or not, in society and in the major systems of the world. So you mentioned before, maybe your lens is, biblical worldview as a believer. Okay, well, I went to public schools, and so even things that came up as an adult, I would say something like hunter and gatherers. And then when I was a director one time at Classical Conversations, it's a homeschool thing, and someone said, "Wait a second, no, God created Adam and Eve in the garden," and I'm like, "Wait," and then I had to really wrestle with that and say, "Okay, so those kind of things, you don't know." You don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
And sometimes as an adult, these different seeds or different things that were planted in childhood have been part of forming what we believe and think and our
100%.
actions, and you don't even realize it.
100%.
So just giving people that grace and giving
Absolutely.
myself that grace. I might mess up, I might these things, but I'm not going to keep saying, what if this, what if that? God's telling me to do it, and I'm going to do it until he tells me not to do it anymore.
One of the things, like, if you're around me for very long at all, you'll hear me say, I don't do drama.
Yeah.
I just don't do drama. Like, I'm a straight shooter. I'm not the friend you ask if I don't look good in these pants. I will tell you yes and no. Why are you laughing? Why do you think that's so funny?
It's always a yes.
Actually true.
It's true. It's definitely true.
Yeah. I believe that is the greatest thing I can do for somebody, is be honest and truthful to you and not be the drama, deception, confusion, lead away, manipulate. Just, it is what it is, and live there. So I love that you just deliver truths and facts, because and today's world says, well, that's my truth. What's your truth? What's your truth? And I get all that. I studied counseling for many, many years, and I get everybody has their own truth and their own story and all of that. And I am willing to sit and listen to those things too. If you're willing to sit and listen to mine, what mine is, right? And that maturity that comes in that, and being able to love in those conversations without the drama of it. When it starts slinging to the attacks, to the name calling, to the, well, why don't you think? And I'm like, hey, I'm not trying to attack you. I'm sticking on my side of the fence and owning what I believe and what I think. And that's okay if you don't. And, we can still agree to make this world a better place in our own views and what we believe. And, to find a place that just delivers truth and just delivers facts is not there on media side very much.
Going back even to what y'all are doing here, or what we do when we're speaking or talking, the power of language and the power of words. So if you go back to things right now, what do we go to? Are we going to Webster's dictionary? What about when they changed? Does that mean that definition changed? Where do you draw the line of, you go back to saying, let's define terms. Well, if we can't even define the terms, it's very difficult to communicate and understand what we're saying. So, there's so many ties into, as a believer, that the command of the language, having that verbal fluency. You can say a poor idea communicated effectively can be more impactful than a great idea that you can't verbally articulate. So I think that's what a lot of people are losing nowadays, especially after 2020. It's almost that attempt to not engage verbally, and I think it's a lot of people they're not unable to eloquently communicate what they are thinking. And it's a really big issue. So the more we can get people talking and discussing without the emotions, if your child's going through something, it's very emotional. But if you're going to go present that, whether it's a school board or the Congress or to your child or your spouse who doesn't agree, you're not going to be very effective if you're very emotional and you're not able to say, okay, what are the facts? Where are we? What can we do right now? What can we control today? And it's not easy, but that's where I've seen it be most effective in my own life, for sure, as I weather a lot of storms right now, but also for other parents, helping them, So that language is such a powerful thing.
Yeah. Well, again, it's another guest that we could talk all day with. We just love everybody that comes on here just so much. It's so good. So good. What a blessing to our audience. Okay, but how does everybody follow Mama Bear, get the app, get the everything? What is that? So tell everybody.
So you can, we're on Instagram, Mama Bears Rising. It's MAMA, Mama Bears Rising. And then we just launched the app. So the best way would be to connect with us on Instagram first. We also have a Facebook group. That's a wonderful way to connect. And then we'll get you into the app from there. You can join an email or text for updates and be looking out for our podcast, hopefully launching this summer. So,
yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And of course, we'll have all the information in the description and everything too. So thanks for standing up for what you feel passionate about and standing in the gap, seeing the gap that was there and then standing in it. And I applaud you for that. And thank you for sharing that with us and our audience today.
Thank you. Thank y'all for having me.
Yes.
Until then, we'll see you on Set Life.